This was a video I hoped I'd never make. However, I think I've hit a wall that I'm quite frankly done trying to climb over. I've been in this community a while now, and I've seen trends up and down. However, I'm watching people make the same mistakes and do the same things that cracked the foundation of the community in half. There's a few things to blame for this. The first is the bullheaded unwillingness the community has to stand up for one another. We are supposed to support and take care of one another, but in recent months and in multiple situations, y'all will claim support behind the scenes, but say nothing and do nothing when it counts. I've had to sit with friends who are heartbroken and devastated and afraid that not a single person in this community will stand up for them against monsters saying the worst possible shit. Things we as a community know and recognize are lies and misinformation, but is allowed to propagate because not one person wants to draw fire. And you may be asking, why haven't I done that if this is something that I'm so passionate about? And it's because I was asked not to, considering it was far too little and far too late. And I didn't want to do something that would make my friends uncomfortable. However, the whole time, at every turn, at every juncture, I said it was the right thing to do. In fact, so much so, it became a huge sticking point between me and some of my closest friends. I've also noticed that once again the community is lapsing into cliques and backroom dealings. I've seen it happen more than once, occasionally even to me. People who are a part of a community where we understand and discuss keep failing and taking into account the literal worst interpretation of literally anything said, as long as it's a critique of their own actions. There's been more than one incident, but I consulted the people slighted, and they didn't want me to name names. So I won't. And if you know who you are, I ask that you don't, and we let things sit, I guess. I can talk about my own issues with it, though. It's been a problem, repeatedly, for many years now, where I will give my opinion, occasionally even at the request of the person, and then I will have nonsense hurled at me because the person I was speaking to willfully misunderstood literally everything that came out of my mouth. And when I proceeded to clarify, I was somehow still in the wrong because I didn't add 1,000 asterisks to cushion what I was saying. I've been called overly aggressive. I've been called cruel. People have said I don't take criticism. When I've solved innumerable problems behind the scenes, both with friends and with other people, because I don't make my shit public unless it goes public without my knowledge or consent. I've never shown these tendencies, I've never continued these tendencies, and I'm getting really exhausted of having people who claim that they appreciate me and that they want me in this community continuing to perpetuate these things about me behind my back. Listen, maybe it's my autism, but when I say a thing, that's usually the only thing I mean by it. If I make a comment that I thought the sky was blue, I don't secretly mean that it's only blue on Tuesdays at 4:20 p.m. when the sun's out. And I'm exhausted of people asking me why I hate pancakes when I tell them I like waffles. Finally, I want to get into the straw that broke the camel's back. So Dalsmic was in contact with V Omega from as far back as 2022. I don't blame you if that's the first time you're hearing about it. Because I only heard about it third hand through a friend. Not only that, but V openly admitted to sexually talking with a minor to Doll, who then told nobody. The whole situation was fumbled by the wider community. Namely, Ephrom hadn't been handling things. So for those of you who don't know, Ephrom has been self-elected the leader of the SEC courthouse, the server made so that conflict can be resolved. I spoke to Fractured Light, one of the members of the courthouse's archive chat. I learned 3 very important things from Light about that chat that absolutely tipped me over the fucking edge. 1. Pepper was being coaxed by Vigelsio to make contact with V, and after this situation with Dalsmik, having this call in the archive room to confirm the things that had been said, Pepper was not told about Doll's contact with V. In fact, Light was scolded for telling Pepper in the first place. 2. PokeSonic's groomer, Sigma Scott, has a new Snapchat account. PokeSonic was informed, not by Ephrom, but once again by Light, who had to break the rules of the chat. So she was not told that her groomer was active again. 3rd, and finally, this room, where all of these backroom dealings, dealing with predators and abusive people in the community, that room, nobody knew that it existed. It was not public knowledge until after I left courthouse. This information was so closely guarded that the people in the server that the chat was housed in did not know it existed. Namely, the server built to discuss dangers and conflict within the community. This is absolutely ridiculous, wildly inept behavior, and I cannot fucking believe the audacity to keep important information from victims and to keep the community in the dark about people that are active threats to its members. One more time for clarity. In the conflict resolution server, the person running it was hiding important information on groomers and dangers to the community from the community. You cannot write irony like that. Ephrom also said that he would make a video to inform people about Scott, much like the video he just made to inform people about Dalsmik. It's been 3 weeks. Ephrom has put out 5 other videos since then, one of them a 50-minute long video on Razor Fist. Good to see where your priorities lie. What this whole thing boils down to is that I'm too fucking exhausted and irate with this community to play babysitter anymore. I'm done losing hair, I'm done losing sleep, I'm done losing joy for a community that has done nothing but show me time and time again that I'm just gonna be a punching bag for trying to help. Nobody's listened to me. Nobody's treated me with dignity, nobody's treated me with respect for a very long time. And I don't feel like much has changed since 2018 for me, if I'm honest. I'm still constantly painted as a wild, rabid dog by anyone and everyone the moment I have a dissenting opinion, despite helping resolve innumerable conflicts behind the scenes. I'm done. I'm not playing mediator for you. I'm gonna let you all make the same mistakes, and I will continue to be Cassandra, sitting here and waiting for you to cut my head off. So to answer your question, Meta, that you've been so diligently asking for months, no. I am not making commentaries ever again. Goodbye.
You know what? I wasn't sure how to start off this commentary, so I figured it would be smartest to play Hiten's apology towards me.
I also want to apologize to Ephrom. While I still think the way things were handled in that situation was wrong, it was also wrong of me to take a drive-by shot at you as I left the community, more so that I never corrected the record. I was going off the words of people who assured me they were there and had the whole story. I'm sorry, Ephrom, you didn't deserve it. Should have been more thorough in my research of the situation and not acted out of immediate outrage. It was a fucked up thing to do, and I'm working on prioritizing my reactivity problems.
Now, I wish to be clear that if Hiten is genuinely getting better regarding their issues, that is very commendable. I am not going to mock that or deride that in any way. The problem is, the events they're describing didn't happen. For those who don't know, Hiten is talking about a video they made called Goodbye SCC. They have since taken it down, however, a re-upload of it is available on YouTube. And in said video, they lob several criticisms my way, which I will get to. Now, the only person in that video they show any evidence is a source for me is Fractured Light. I know that wasn't their only source, however, to my knowledge, any other sources they've had have remained anonymous. Let's look at some of the DMs from Light that Hiten showed in that video and see if you notice what I notice. Yeah, when he found out I had, they said, next time you're gonna check with me if that's okay, something along those lines. I think V's inactive speedrun account, the fact Sigma Scott 4, Pokesonic's groomer, has a Snapchat, doll claiming Junkie told him and Laka about Spocter's flash drive, and nothing else to my memory, but that's only to memory. I think I told her. I'll double check. I think so? Like, if Ephrom found out I told her, I think he'd consider it a rule break, but I don't think he knows I did that. Light's messages were full of him saying that he personally did not know if what he was claiming to Hiten was 100% accurate. The idea that Light was saying that he had the full story was entirely incorrect. But okay, at the very least, Hiten apologized. I will give them that. In the same video where they insult the community I'm a part of and have been a part of for several years and have been constantly working to try and improve, before a minute passes,
in the echo chamber that was the SCC, I had those beliefs confirmed and enabled by the people around me.
Also, I just need to highlight this real quick.
I realize now that this community has been full of hypocrisy and snakes from the very beginning. I believed that there were good people here and that we were worth the work, but I no longer believe that.
You're sorry to me, but also the community I'm in is exclusively made up of bad people and snakes. Wouldn't that include me, by the way? Like, logically?
For all of Susie's gripes with cancel culture, the Cloud Palace and the SCC as a whole were some of the biggest perpetrators of it.
In what context exactly? Especially given you yourself covered a situation that was directly about people not cutting ties with somebody as abhorrent as V fucking Omega. Wouldn't a community obsessed with cancel culture also be one that kicks people like that out so fast that nobody would even consider hanging around with them, just based on what that term means? And I wish to be absolutely clear, I am not saying that Hiten cannot criticize the SCC. I'm confused as to why they would make such statements in a video where they're apologizing to, among others, somebody in the SCC, that being yours truly. And this video is full of accusations against a very good friend of mine, that being Lio Convoy. The claims are entirely unsubstantiated, by the way. Hiten shows absolutely no evidence for anything they say at any point in this video, truth be told. Seriously, the entire video is just Hiten talking over this image. Never once do they show any screenshots or any video clips or anything to actually back up what they are saying. And this wouldn't even bother me so much if it weren't for the fact that very serious claims were being thrown Lio's way all throughout basically the entire last half hour of Hiten's video. And I want to be clear, when I say these claims are serious, I'm referring to Hiten saying Lio falsely accused them of abuse and damaged their mental health in very severe ways. I am not even going to bother responding to these accusations against Lio, because regardless of what I personally think of them, there's just nothing to discuss. She says things that she alleges happened, but doesn't actually provide any proof for anything. None of this is even getting into the already established running point throughout this video that the SCC was just horribly toxic, and that's one of the main reasons why Hiten was like this, or at the very least the SCC enabled already existing toxic traits within them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like the SCC has always been perfect. No community has been. However, I want to point out real quick that Two of the biggest community-wide callouts the past year, the ones done by Rin and Chuli, were specifically about Hiten and their friend circle. I'm not going to pretend the community was peaceful and all of that before Hiten showed up. That would be ridiculous. However, I find this framing so problematic because, to be blunt, it's not as if Hiten were some low-level member of the community who got swept up in their bad habits. Hiten was one of the top dogs. Hiten was also not some small-time player in a lot of these problems. Hiten was at the center of them. By the way, where exactly was your mention of Kami? You know, the person who you misrepresented the grooming story of without their permission in order to get a shot in at me? Kami already did their own video going into that if you would like to watch it. Safi, one of the people who Hiten apologized to, also made a full video going into her problems with what was said. And Rin, a different person who Hiten apologized to in this video, also wrote a Google document responding to what Hiten said. Lyo also responded to several of the accusations against him on Hidden Heroine's stream recently. Chuli was also present on that stream, who's another person that Hiten apologized to that also doesn't forgive them. Anyway, it's probably a smart idea to finally cover the Goodbye SCC video. Funnily enough, I was already planning on doing a full commentary on it when Hiten's video dropped, so this served as extra incentive.
This was a video I hoped I'd never make. However, I think I've hit a wall that I'm quite frankly done trying to climb over. I've been in this community a while now, and I've seen trends up and down. However, I'm watching people make the same mistakes and do the same things that cracked the foundation of the community in half.
One of the most obnoxious things about this video is Hiten's reliance on Barnum statements. For those who don't know, Barnum statements are essentially sentences that sound very unique and personalized to you, but in truth are incredibly general and could apply to a variety of situations. The first half of Hiten's video is chocked full, jam-packed, filled to the fucking brim with Barnum statements. Because of that, I cannot respond to a good chunk of this video because so much of it fails to actually make coherent sense. I'm pretty sure I know what's being discussed, but I say pretty sure because the details given are so vague that I honestly am not certain. And normally, I can think of at the very least one other situation it could be applied to, but also, I'm not omnipresent within the SCC. It's perfectly possible there's a situation Hiten was referencing that I just wasn't involved with. Now, Hiten does say at a couple points the main reason they aren't giving specifics is because they were asked not to by those involved.
There's been more than one incident, but I consulted the people slighted, and they didn't want me to name names. So I won't, and if you know who you are, I ask that you don't, and we let things sit, I guess.
But if you're forced to keep things so general that it is genuinely impossible to figure out what you are talking about, then what the fuck was the point of vague posting like this in the first place?
There's a few things to blame for this. The first is the bullheaded unwillingness the community has to stand up for one another. We are supposed to support and take care of one another, but in recent months and in multiple situations, y'all will claim support behind the scenes, but say nothing and do nothing when it counts.
I think you're confusing the SCC with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, those guys actually do have an obligation to stand up for one another. But just to be 100% clear, people in the SCC are under no obligation to defend one another in the abstract. Now, I would argue there is an obligation to say things that are true and stand up for those being wrong, albeit I consider that more of a human value as opposed to an SCC one. And even then, I don't really have figures or data to back that up. It's just what I believe would be morally correct. However, somebody being in the SCC does not mean they get stood up for no matter what, regardless of the context. And neither does Hiten, given she criticized people like Keyblade Master and Tippy during the Cloak and Dagger situation. Rightfully so, for the record. I completely agree with her that those two were utterly abhorrent.
Listen, maybe it's my autism, but when I say a thing, that's usually the only thing I mean by it. If I make a comment that I thought the sky was blue, I don't secretly mean that it's only blue on Tuesdays at 4:20 p.m. when the sun's out.
You know, in that example, you're saying something completely wrong then, right? The sky isn't perpetually blue 24/7. Here is a picture of the sunrise I found through Google Images. Notice the distinct lack of blue. Instead, you'll see a lot of reds, oranges, and yellows. Here's a picture of the night sky. Notice that it is black and you can see some white stars and a little bit of yellow at the bottom. But where exactly is the blue, Hiten? I can't find it because it doesn't exist.
Finally, I want to get into the straw that broke the camel's back. So Dalsmik was in contact with V Omega from as far back as 2022. I don't blame you if that's the first time you're hearing about it. Because I only heard about it third hand through a friend. Not only that, but V openly admitted to sexually talking with a minor to Doll, who then told nobody. The whole situation was fumbled by the wider community. Namely, Ephrom hadn't been handling things. So for those of you who don't know, Ephrom has been self-elected the leader of the SCC courthouse.
I was the owner of the damn server at the time. The fuck do you mean self-elected? Obviously, I was going to be the one in charge, given it was my server at that point. Or do you think I just walked into the server one day and went, "I'm the big kahuna"?
The server made so that conflict can be resolved. I spoke to Fractured Light, one of the members of the courthouse's archive chat. I learned 3 very important things from Light about that chat that absolutely tipped me over the fucking edge. 1. Pepper was being coaxed by Vigelsio to make contact with V, and after this situation with Dalsmik, having this call in the archive room to confirm the things that had been said...
The call with Dalsmik was not in the archive room. You know that, right? It wasn't even in courthouse. It was in a private DM group.
Pepper was not told about Doll's contact with V. In fact, Light was scolded for telling Pepper in the first place.
Your own damn screenshot debunks that. Light specifically said he was scolded for telling Edwin, formerly known as Pepper, what happened without my knowledge.
2. PokeSonic's groomer, Sigma Scott, has a new Snapchat account. PokeSonic was informed, not by Ephrom, but once again by Light, who had to break the rules of the chat. So she was not told that her groomer was active again.
Again, Light was far from certain about it. You'd actually realize that if you read the damn messages you put on screen. Also, was Kame informed or weren't they? You contradict that in this very fucking sentence.
3rd, and finally, this room, where all of these backroom dealings, dealing with predators and abusive people in the community, that room, nobody knew that it existed. It was not public knowledge until after I left courthouse.
So let's ignore the fact that you don't actually give us any time frame for when you left courthouse, meaning that statement doesn't really communicate anything. How long had the archive room existed by that point? And furthermore, why wasn't it known to the public? I'm just going to say right now that I personally never attempted to keep the archive room a secret. And this is also what Light says. His exact words are, "Admittedly, I'd assumed everyone already knew about it, 'cause I did tell a few people like Erb, Liquid, and I think Emo about it."
This information was so closely guarded that the people in the server that the chat was housed in did not know it existed.
It wasn't closely guarded. That's just not a thing that was told to you in any way whatsoever, Hiten. Going back to what Light actually fucking said, the problem was less that this information was kept away from the community and more that we perpetually underestimated how far said information was being spread. As the person who led the archive room, I can testify that was actually a rather massive problem. That's not even my only problem with this, by the way, because you remember how earlier Hiten got onto me for asking Light to let me know before they gave information found in the archive room to others? Yeah, one of the major reasons why that restriction was put in place is because as the leader, I do actually need to know what the general community knows before I can make decisions regarding serious matters.
Namely, the server built to discuss dangers and conflict within the community. This is absolutely ridiculous, wildly inept behavior, and I cannot fucking believe the audacity to keep important information from victims and to keep the community in the dark about people that are active threats to its members.
Neither Dull nor Sigma Scott were active threats to the SCC by that point, though. What in the ever-loving fuck are you going on about? Were they actively still engaging in their behaviors at the time among SCC members? Because, to my knowledge, Sigma Scott was not even really involved with SCC spaces starting years before the information about him being a predator came out. Similarly, if memory serves, although Dull had done abhorrent things years ago, trust me, I did an entire video blasting him. I know what his behavior was. But he wasn't actively engaging in that behavior at that time, to my knowledge at least. And even if he was, it's not like he was even in the fucking community anymore. He left after Cloak and Dagger. Also, I've been trying to ignore just giving my side of the story for basically the entire commentary, because genuinely, that's not really what's important. What matters is what I can prove, not what I say happened. However, I do want to take a moment and just mention real quick. You guys want to know why I was keeping people in the dark regarding Dull? Because I was worried that he'd catch wind of the general dislike towards him from the community at the time, again, in my opinion, rightfully so, get scared and run. If that happened, we'd have never known about the Binary Storks account, nor would we know the sheer extent that Dull was aware what V was doing. Nor would we have any of the information we got in those screenshots of the DMs between Dull and V. To put it as bluntly as possible, there was no way in fuck I was going to let that happen. Now, did I always make the best choices during that situation? Obviously not. Nobody is going to exclusively make the best choices in any situation where there are so many choices to make. And I have no doubt that reasonable people could engage in honest, genuine criticism of some of my actions during that situation as a whole. However, Hiten is just ignoring the context for these decisions, and that is genuinely one of the most frustrating aspects of this entire video.
Ephrom also said that he would make a video to inform people about Scott, much like the video he just made to inform people about Dollsmick.
Really? I did? Do you have any evidence of this at all?
It's been 3 weeks. Ephrom has put out 5 other videos since then, one of them a 50-minute long video on Razor Fist.
Yeah, I decided to cover a video of Razor Fist that had over 600,000 views at the time of my commentary and was saying utterly nonsensical statements about an incredibly important historical event. Funny you don't phrase it like that. Also, really weird how you don't have any evidence I even proposed doing this in the first place, but now you apparently have a specific date, or at the very least a general time frame as to when I did.
Good to see where your priorities lie. What this whole thing boils down to is that I'm too fucking exhausted and irate with this community
to re-record that line.
I'm done losing hair, I'm done losing sleep, I'm done losing joy for a community that has done nothing but show me time and time again that I'm just gonna be a punching bag for trying to help.
How the fuck does that relate to this? Genuinely, Hiten had absolutely no involvement to my knowledge in any of the situations they have specifically talked about in this video. What the fuck do they mean they were treated like a punching bag? Where did that come from? My final thoughts are that this video was absolutely horrendous in so many ways. Good night and good luck.
So, some of you have questions, I'm sure. I've been trying to avoid talking about this situation involving Chuli for a couple of reasons. For one, I had been told that Chuli wanted to be left alone and to not talk about what happened publicly. Another was that I was manipulated and turned against her by Avi Haltman. And lastly, in the echo chamber that was the SCC, I had those beliefs confirmed and enabled by the people around me. This should have been addressed sooner, but I had very real, very scary things happening in my own personal life that demanded my attention before this. On top of that, I've been in therapy for a few months now, and with distance from the situation came clarity both about my own actions and about the actions of those around me. So I'm going to take accountability for the part I played in Chuli's pain over the past few years and my hostility in general, because I've said before, intention does not mitigate impact, and I had an impact. I will be explaining why these things happened, but I want it noted up top. They are just that. They are explanations. They're not excuses by any means. It's important to me that context on my side is given, but it does not erase what happened, and I don't intend it to come across that way. I just want you to know what happened. So I have a hair trigger for aggression, which was very greatly exacerbated during my time in the SCC. I would see something that would trigger me, and I'd act upon it in rage. I was far more hostile than I ever should have been. This is something that overshadows a lot of the wrong I've done in some shade or another. I see something that causes problems, I fly off the handle, and as a result, I end up hurting people. To Fran, I'm sorry for berating you the way I did. You were young, your actions did not warrant the level of vitriolic language I used in making those videos about the first Spoctor allegations in 2018. You need somebody to come to you and explain what the issue was with your video in private. You didn't need the dog pile, and I'm sorry. To Safi, I wanted to apologize for making your story public before you were ready to. When the doc about Ray was being made, I was told by Avi that your experience was already included with your permission, rather than double checking. I took his word for it, because it seemed like a weird thing to lie about. I should have dug into that more, and I regret not doing so. I'm very sorry. I also want to apologize to Ephrom. While I still think the way things were handled in that situation was wrong, it was also wrong of me to take a drive-by shot at you as I left the community, more so that I never corrected the record. I was going off the words of people who assured me they were there and had the whole story. I'm sorry, Ephrom, you didn't deserve it. Should have been more thorough in my research of the situation and not acted out of immediate outrage. It was a fucked up thing to do, and I'm working on prioritizing my reactivity problems. I want to apologize to Hive as well, but I need to explain some things, because a lot of this has been blown out of proportion. When I did art commissions, I've made it clear in both streams and social media that you would have to submit an application through Google Forms because it was the easiest way for me to keep track of commissions I had. I have said over and over that my commissions are structured the way that they are because I have memory issues and I didn't want to take somebody's money and forget. Hive circumvented that after I had told him and after he had filled out the paperwork to pay me via Twitch donations. And sure enough, I forgot. By the time that you had messaged me, we no longer had any servers in common because I had left Cat's Lair, which is why your message didn't go through. I never blocked you. I never had reason to. If I had blocked you, you'd have gotten the Clyde bot, not read text. That being said, I am sorry for the miscommunication on my part, and I want it clear that I have since refunded you the moment I found out that this had happened. I also want to apologize to Rin. I have a lot to apologize to you for. For one, we should have examined Yoon's side a little more closely. He provided some evidence of what he was claiming, but I didn't look into it as well as I should have. I got involved the way I did because of what was claimed, and as well, I felt justified when you said that nobody would remember me if I killed myself, and I acted on a lot of personal anger about that. Between that and the claims that you'd been stalking and harassing Yoon, I felt justified in talking about what was happening. We should have seen through it. That's on me. Your mental health should never have been blasted to the SEC. You should not have gotten to a point where you felt like you needed to dox your medical forms in order to prove these things. I'm so sorry if I had ever contributed to that. For what it's worth, upon request, I did try to contact Yoon in order to come back to answer for what he had done, as we have personal messages together, but he never got back to me. And if you're watching this, don't come back and deal with your shit. Don't talk to me ever again. I also want to apologize for misgendering and dead-naming you. I'm trans myself, and it was never my intention to be transphobic. I knew you when you were your dead name, and before you went by he, him pronouns. We didn't interact very much, and you changed your name and your preferred pronouns quite a bit, and because we were not close and I didn't know you that well, I just kind of leaned into the things I was used to. I'm sorry about that tremendously. I should have paid more attention. So I've stopped taking my outbursts public, and I've been having these conversations about the spur-of-the-moment thoughts I've been having with friends. I've made mistakes, and I'm learning and changing. This is my adaptation for it, because some things just don't need to be public. My default response is always going to be fight. I get angry and mean with people who have hurt me, and it's a trauma response that I can't stop, but I need to have better control of. So I want to apologize for a couple things more, namely that I haven't and still won't watch videos on me. Accountability is important, but my mental health and my safety matters more to me. It's why I deleted my social media. Having my mental illness mocked, having abuse hurled my way on any platform I had made me a danger to myself. So on the advice of several therapists that I saw in IOP, I'm not exposing myself to more of it. The response I had to your original videos based on things relayed to me by others naturally made misinterpretation easy and outright lies. I was used as a weapon against you thanks to blind loyalty, and it was effective. And I'm sorry, I don't have an excuse for that. To Chuli in particular, I want to apologize for quite a few things. I've apologized to you 3 times. I will do so again. But I want to elaborate more on my end of things this time. The response I had to your original tweets and videos was based on things relayed to me by other people. I never willingly sought out anything about you myself after our original argument about Eugenia Cooney. I went so far as to block you because we never got along, and at the time, I didn't like how you pressed for my former friend's private information. I'm to understand that I was wrong in that thinking, and I had totally misunderstood what you had been asking for in the argument. You weren't asking for private information, you were asking for alternative solutions. It's relatively small compared to everything else, but I wanted to correct that on my part since I claimed otherwise. After that point, I didn't hate you, but I will admit I didn't like you. Avi saw that and would bring you up in calls more often. He was one of the people that initially told me about the Faghost video. I came into that half-cocked and entirely uninformed. I didn't do my own due diligence, and I was very confused with the video that was posted, and I misunderstood a lot of things in that video, which were corrected for me later. But I saw you tweeting about Faghost and going into old group chats to remind them to leave, and all of the comments that were made, I snapped. When I made those tweets, part of it was because I thought you were harassing somebody who was very mentally ill, and I was worried that they would hurt themselves. I've been in a situation, multiple situations, where I have had to deal with the aftermath of someone taking their life because of one bad argument, and I didn't want this to happen to you or to anyone else. And I didn't think I saw someone poking and prodding at someone who was very mentally ill and dangerous to both themselves and others. And it didn't help that when I went to my peers about it, they were all agreeing with my assessment of the situation, including Avi. I didn't know this at the time, obviously, but Avi, to that point, had been close to you, enough so that I found out he was playing both sides of that conversation. He was actively in DMs telling you that I was a bad person, that I was doing things wrong, while he was in call with me, telling me that I was right, and that you were a danger. Avi was one of the people in the server who had the ability to stop me, who knew what was going on, and never did. In fact, rather than correcting me, he participated in the victim shaming that followed. I need to stress that in sharing this, I am not trying to pass off blame. I just want to provide additional context as to why things turned out the way they did on my end. What I did is what I did. Avi did not make me do that. I just wanted to make the record known that he did encourage and lie to me while I was already activated. In my tweeting about Faghost, I questioned the pain that they inflicted on you. I called you a bad victim, and I tone policed you in the same way Spocker did to me. My original intent in my tweets don't matter, so I'm not even going to try to explain those. They impacted you negatively, and in my anger, I victim shamed and tone policed you. And I made it much harder for you to speak up about the horrible things you experienced, not just from Faghost, but from the community. I don't need to provide context. I shouldn't have done it. There was no context in which that was appropriate. I let my anger get the better of me, and that was wrong. It was deeply fucked up. I'm tremendously sorry. After the Faghost tweets, Avi told me a lot of things in calls and in person when he was in my home, which were claims that you abused him, to the claim that you were coming after me as hard as you were because you were jealous that he was hanging out with me and my friend group as opposed to you. He said often enough that the people in the friend circle believed, which is why when Nezzy made his tweets about you, he framed it as you being jealous that he was dating Avi. Avi claimed abuse, and that was ultimately what poisoned the well for me. But in hindsight, he didn't offer very much evidence. He offered screenshots, but they were not very good. And mostly it was testimonials of things you had said or done in calls. I'm not passing off blame. I just want to provide context like before, that this was why this became this way. For the Faghost call, I will be completely transparent. Avi didn't tell me that he told Faghost about the call, and nobody who was in the house at the time recalls that, because he was in my home when it happened. As for how he found out, at the time I was a Senate mod, and he was staying in our home, it'd be hard for him to have not known about it. If I had known, Lio would have been the first person I would have told. Before the call with Faghost, Lio told me that Ponder told him that you and Clown were not comfortable with me being there for it, and I was asked not to show up. I understand why you wanted that, and I do believe that was the best for both of us. After that point, however, I had taken that and assumed that meant that you would stay away from me and I would stay away from you. The issue for me was never that you didn't want me there. I didn't like joining those calls. I wouldn't have done so anyway, so being asked not to show up was no skin off my nose. I was mad that Ponder went behind my back to ask Lio to do it without telling me, instead of just asking me herself. Especially because I was still under the assumption that we were friends at the time, so it was hurtful that she chose to do something a roundabout way instead of just telling me that you were not comfortable and you didn't want me there. I apologized for Faghost tweets at the time, but after being told that you had been tweeting about me again because of what Avi had been claiming up to this point, I felt you had a personal vendetta against me because Avi stayed my friend as well. I realized that I also had lingering resentment for how things went and how things were going, which is why I went to my peers to air out my grievances with the situation, as well as how things were handled. I didn't want to make a public scene of it again, because I didn't have all the information, I didn't know what was going on. You told me to leave you alone, I listened, so I aired out my irritation with friends in private. I misunderstood the situation, I thought I knew more than I did, I tone policed you, and I can disagree with how it had been handled all I want, but it wasn't my place to make those comments and undermine your pain the way I did. We express things differently as victims, and I should have considered that as someone who has experienced the very same thing. It was hypocritical, and it was incredibly shitty of me. Now, a lot of very personal things are being made public without my consent, so we're going to address a couple of things, including Lio Convoy. And I want to preface this by saying it's a little disorganized, so you're going to have to bear with me. Lio, you were a part of my support system in the same way that I had become a part of yours. I asked you to be there for me when I was at my lowest and felt bad going to my roommates or my partner. You were there for my breakdowns, to hang out, to watch anime together. In those ways, you were a very good friend to me. I am sorry that I triggered you. I am sorry that the way I handled my mental health scared you. I am sorry that my actions during my mental breakdowns had brought you back to a low point in your life, but I am not going to pretend that I am not equally hurt. I am hurt that you never communicated with me, that you were uncomfortable with the way I coped with the scarier parts of my mental illness. You could have at any point communicated with me that you didn't know how to handle my mental health. Many of the people in my circle have done so now, and that would have been totally understandable had you chosen to speak to me about it. Instead, Lio has accused me of financial abuse because he paid for a video of mine to be edited. Now, what he has omitted in this situation was that I was constantly pressured to take his money despite constant discomfort. He pushed and pushed and pushed, telling me, how can I help you if you won't let me? He offered to pay for things, to buy them for me. He was actually the one who found Emo to edit that video. He had planned to pay Susie behind my back at one point. In fact, another thing that he omitted was the offer that was actually made where he told me that he was willing to pay for all of my videos to be edited until my own money was being generated. Something I told him repeatedly I was wildly uncomfortable with because I didn't know how long that would take, and I didn't want him sinking what could have ended up being thousands of dollars into me. He was the one who kept badgering me about reopening my Patreon. I told him I was uncomfortable taking money from other people. He was one of the people who pushed me into opening my throne because I was uncomfortable taking gifts from other people. And I told him that despite my fears and complaints about money, all I had to do was just work harder. That I could have edited my own videos, I could have struck up bargains with other people, that I could have made more Patreon content. I was willing to simply work harder, but I was constantly pushed into taking his money. I told him that after years of being told exactly how much money it took to raise me, I didn't like accepting money from others, and he pushed my boundaries that I specifically set because I was always afraid of this exact thing. Now, Lio has also accused me of using Peach's words against him and released a suicidal episode of mine because of that. What he has omitted was the fact that the night I had that breakdown, he was not the first person I went to, nor was he the second, nor was he the third. He was the fourth person I had contacted. I first went to my partner, then both of my roommates, then him, hours later, when I still wasn't feeling better. In fact, he also omitted that he's never checked in on me. He didn't contact the people I lived with. He didn't ask my partner if I was safe or alive. Instead, he decided to go to my partner to demand to know why Brooke and Justin weren't calling a 5150 on me, which is a California law code and did not apply to the state I lived in, while Justin was actively holding me on the floor as I was breaking down after I had been removed from my home in handcuffs because of another incident that Lio caused. He went to the SCC courthouse to ask other friends of mine about where I was, if they had my address, instead of going to the people who lived in my house. He never asked if I was okay. Instead, he felt it appropriate to comment about the response I had to this situation when I was my most unstable and had just barely gotten out of the psych ward. He had to be told that I had stabilized, but he never asked if I was okay during this incident. He has also omitted this was not the first incident of me breaking down in this way. In fact, his words to me were that he would never go to Chuli with my delusions because it would be fucked up of him to do so. That I could trust him with my safety, that he was a safe person to vent to when I was breaking down. He also talked to me frequently about his own struggles, which made me feel like he was trustworthy. Not once did he tell me those words bothered him, or made him uncomfortable, or that he needed distance, or that he was incapable of helping. In fact, he constantly encouraged me to keep going to him. He has claimed I owed my partner an apology for my first suicide attempt, and omitted that he was the cause, because I had outlined to him over and over that it made me deeply uncomfortable that he was emotional support to somebody who had a vendetta against me and me at the same time, that while I didn't mind him helping her sort out her issues, sitting on the fence between us made me deeply paranoid, especially when he spoke to me less and less, only coming to me about issues when it was to tell me an awful person I am, how bad it was, and then immediately telling me that despite how bad it was, he could never hate me. He will claim this is because I stopped asking him to come to me with it. What he is going to omit to you is that he would continue to withhold information from me when I asked. He forced his way into this dispute between us and then vanished from my support system after promising me that he would not do that. I made these fears crystal clear to him because he was the one who exposed Avi to us. He was the one who told me Ponder had been screenshotting my private event spaces and praying friendly to my face for years. He was the one who told me Yoon had dumped our DMs when I went to him for my anger. I was deep in the throes of paranoid delusions, actively believing I was being recorded in every call, that every friend was leaking information. I told him this. All of this. I was honest and open about my fear, telling him when he asked exactly what my problems were. And what did he do? He told me I wasn't making sense, that he didn't understand what the problem was. His frequent response to my paranoia and heartache and fear was, "Have I ever given you a reason to distrust me?" When I was actively telling him why I distrusted him, and I snapped. It was months of me telling him exactly why I couldn't trust anyone, let alone him. I was so afraid that yet another person was going to betray my trust and take advantage of me after I had been told that some of my closest friends, someone that I had called my brother, was actively shitting on me and poisoning me against other people. I was terrified. I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. I was scared and weak and vulnerable, and the first time that he gave me any information in months was to tell me that no matter what I said, no matter what I did, no matter how I groveled and begged and pleaded, that all of the times I was manipulated into hostility and my friends' deep violations of my trust were going to be released to the public with the sole blame set on me. I was then put in the headspace that I had to kill myself or self-injure in order to be forgiven. I cracked, and I attempted. I didn't want to talk about this, but everybody else is very comfortable airing out what happened, so now you know from my mouth. And for all of the talk he had about Justin not calling the police for my second attempt, he didn't for my first. If he said he would, he hesitated because he was told that I was afraid of going to an institution, and during the second attempt, that didn't matter, apparently. Now, I am being told that it was wrong of me to tell my roommates and my partner that I was suicidal, that I had attempted to kill myself, that I was actively self-harming, that I was delusional, and that I believed that that was the only solution. I am told that this was to manipulate him by threatening to show him my self-harm. First, never once did I say that. I told him I had taken pictures this time, specifically because I had been repeatedly told that I was faking it, that I was lying, and that it was a manipulation tactic. So I told him that I had taken pictures so that this time I could not be accused of lying to people about my self-harm. Second, he was not the first person I went to, not the second, not the third. He was the fourth person to be contacted after things had wildly escalated for hours due to the copious amounts of harassment that were being sent by his and Chuli's audience and associates. I went to him because I was actively delusional and thinking that if I were to self-injure or commit, that she would be satisfied and finally leave me and my loved ones alone. He was the only point of contact I trusted because I believed wholeheartedly that Lio wouldn't lie. I found out in the morning he had been sitting in courthouse DMing my terrified partner about Justin not calling the police and talking to people who hated me about a breakdown I was actively having instead of going to the people who were 10 feet away from me and finding out if I was okay. Brooke Justin, and Dio saved my life, and I will forever be grateful to them. If I hadn't gone to them, you would not be hearing my voice right now. To claim that I should apologize to them for crying out for help is disgusting. What would you rather I have done? Where would you rather I have gone? If talking to others about my attempt was wrong, what should I have done? I spent 4 days in inpatient because those people saved me from a second attempt on my life. They helped me find the intensive outpatient that I needed to transition back into living my life. They contacted my family back home to form a plan for my safety. It is monstrous of you to have the temerity to show the public a moment of suicidal ideation when you begged me to trust you, tell me that I should apologize for trusting you in the first place, and justifying it because of a cat meme and a joke on Blue Sky when you never once in weeks went to a single person in my life or to me to so much as ask how I was doing after that last breakdown, and then proceed to talk shit about the people in my life taking care of me. I don't think I have to explain that me making a joke about a very scary time in my life as a way to give it less power and explain to the public, and then going behind my back to show people the explicit details of that mental breakdown and that suicide attempt without my knowledge or consent are not the same fucking thing. He claims he wanted what was best for me, but omitted him berating my loved ones, slung Bible verses and yelled at them, violated boundaries that they set, and then tried to harass them into giving access to me again. He claims he felt betrayed because I cut him out of my life, but he will omit that the cause of it was violating the very trust he told me that I was supposed to have. I supported him at every turn. I tried not to push him into telling me anything he didn't want to. I only ever assured him that if he needed anyone to talk to, that I was there. I never made him feel guilty for trusting me because I never had to. I showed up. I let my actions do that. I loved him like family, and it feels like that's what he wanted the whole time. No matter how you feel about me, or the people that used to be around him, Lio has proven to not have the emotional or mental capacity to handle someone else's mental health, not when his understanding of it is rudimentary at best. If you are going to interact with him in the future, know that at any given minute, you will not be told everything. Information will always be withheld from you. You will never be able to know if he has told you something, because the moment he decides you are no longer worthy, everything is on the table. After breaking my trust and removing him from my life, his immediate response was to commit a greater violation of my privacy than any of the people that he had told me were monsters, and I don't know how long he would have kept that from me. How long before he told me that he went to the very person he promised me over and over he wouldn't tell? How long before he told Justin what he was saying about him behind his back? Was he going to use my attempt as a gotcha against me in a call he wanted to have? This was someone who had, days before, assured me that I was his closest friend and someone he loved. Someone he promised he could never hate. If I am not safe, neither are you. This is where I have to issue another apology. Upon realizing what Lio had done, I panicked and went to Aaron Tempest, owner of the courthouse, to ask him to take the screenshots down. He has since told me he was hurt by this request to abuse his moderator powers for that, and I'm sorry. On the note of my violated privacy, I found out via multiple sources that a shit ton of my private conversations were leaked by friends behind my back. June handed over my DMs, Doodletones gave up the Cloud Palace's vent chat, and also scraped my private server without my knowledge or consent, which they immediately jumped on, and Pondersprocket took screenshots of my vent channel. Trying to scrape as much information on me as possible like this is excessive and creepy, and further solidified when I had been told that Chuli had been going around trying to find out my address. I was told that this was to have a wellness check called, so I want to acknowledge that, but I'm going to be honest, I do not believe that it is for altruistic purposes, that they want all of this private information on me. Am I accusing them of trying to dox me? No. I am not accusing them of trying to dox me. I am, however, saying that I cannot trust someone who has publicly said that, quote, my privacy goes bye-bye, has positive intent to have deeply personal information about me, including my address. I have been told that my DMs were all right to be made public because these things were established as acceptable to the community. However, I was lambasted in 2018 and harassed repeatedly because I had violated an unspoken rule that we weren't allowed to leak the very same thing. Because things said in vent chats were not supposed to be held against someone. That releasing private DMs because of a slight was still wrong. It is hypocritical and inconsistent. Those were private spaces where I was repeatedly assured that they were safe to let out spur-of-the-moment anger and emotional outbursts. I only ever did these things in private because of that fact. All of these people knew me well enough to know that my trauma response to hurt is not sadness, but anger. And I was told that venting in private was the alternative to airing spur-of-the-moment grievances in public, so that's what I did. I have been reassured of this repeatedly in therapy that that is the best method to control this response. I am sorry for the contents of those messages, but I am not sorry for choosing to go to the people I trusted to vent about the situation. Venting how I felt in private or to individual people about how I felt is the safe, emotionally mature action. And despite me venting, I never once prevented people around me from being friends with or associating with anyone I spoke about. I never made anyone pick sides. I never said they couldn't talk to her. I never said they couldn't help her. I had been friends with people who were friends of hers, and I have never once told them to stop being her friend. I have talked about how I felt in private, and only spoke up about how I felt when provoked by somebody asking me how I felt, or when she said something about me publicly first. If anyone had any issues with the way I spoke about her, I was never told. And I'm tired of being told that I was supposed to be a mind reader and stop doing things when nobody ever spoke to me about it. Various people have insinuated that my claims of self-harm or suicidal ideation or my hospitalization are fake, and quite frankly, that's disgusting and fucked up of you to imply. You don't know me, you don't know what I'm going through, and that's part of what got me to where I am in this situation. Taking me out of it, it's disrespectful to my roommates, who had to confiscate the items I could have used to hurt myself. It's disrespectful to my partner, who sounded the alarm immediately the moment he realized I was going to attempt. And it's disrespectful to every single person who sat there and helped me through my breakdown. The only way I can prove that these things were to show you my new scars or my discharge papers, and quite frankly, that's not happening. I've had my mental health trivialized, and I'm not adding more fuel to that fire. You'll have to take my word and the word of the people who made sure I was hospitalized. Another disgusting accusation that has been shifted around in the background, and that I'm going to completely flat out deny, is the comments about what happened in the Cloud Palace. Now that the entirety of the Cloud Palace has been released by Susie, there is an accusation that I and other members knew about Vigelsio's friendship with V Omega before the events of Cloak and Dagger because of something Tippy mentioned in a different part of the server in a thread. This accusation against me specifically comes because I posted a reaction to a comment that Avi made underneath Tippy's. And a few things need to be outlined about that. First of all, I was barely active in Cloud Palace. I usually only spoke when someone else told me something was being said that I had input on, or if I was directly tagged and asked a question. Second, I never spoke in that thread in question. I only posted reactions to 2 posts. The one made by Avi, and the one made by Luxter 2 hours later. Avi's pertained directly to something that Rachel Mills said about me that he had to tell me was posted because, again, I was never in Cloud Palace. Third was that Tippy's post was spoiler tagged, meaning I wouldn't have seen it upon opening the chat. Fourth, all these messages occurred as I was setting up for stream. My priority before streaming isn't reading up on Cloud Palace drama. My priority is setting up for stream, especially because streaming takes a lot out of my social battery. My streams tended to be between an hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours because they took so much out of me. That was when I reacted to Luxter's message. Additionally, I am infamous in my social group for not reading messages. It's caused a good number of problems, and it's a bad habit I need to fix, but it also means I don't read every message in a thread where the only comment about me is the source of my attention. I find it a little wild that literally every single problem that anyone has with me is that I am a hothead who jumps into things without thinking and causes a huge scene. Except for this one particular instance where I didn't, and then waited years to actually get upset about it in real time where people could see and hear my first reactions. Quite frankly, I had no attachment to Tippy or Vigelsio. If I had seen the message in question, there is no reason for me to not blow up about it, which I did do the moment I found out. As much acting work as I have done, I am not that good an actor that in those calls I could have pretended to not know. In summation, this accusation boils down to me putting a reaction to a post beneath a post I couldn't immediately see, that another person had to tell me was being posted because it was directly about me, in a thread I never spoke in, which was in a server I wasn't active in, going against everything my character has been accused of being, and feigning surprise in real time so well that dozens of people who were close personal friends, including my partner and the people I lived with, so well that they couldn't tell I was lying. Naturally, I think it's a disgusting accusation that's being made so lightly based on shoddy, uncertain evidence, and putting that shit on me is vile, and you should be ashamed. I realize now that this community has been full of hypocrisy and snakes from the very beginning. I believed that there were good people here, and that we were worth the work, but I no longer believe that. I thought I had been doing better, and I, in fact, was made much worse. I became someone I don't recognize, and contributed to other people's pain in horrifying ways. For all of Susie's gripes with cancel culture, the Cloud Palace and the SCC as a whole were some of the biggest perpetrators of it. The rules of this community are only there to be used as an excuse for the vile behavior done by people within it. People I loved, trusted, called friends. Many of them have spoken to and about me in ways they know are untrue of my character, even though they have known me for years. I came away from this violated and disgusted with what I was doing on behalf of the same people who assured me that I was doing what was right in order to use me to hurt others. Many cords have been cut with people I deeply cared for because they didn't want to own up to their part in this. They were ready to abandon years of friendship over it, and you know what? That's their choice to make. I did so much damage to people because I was misguided and convinced that I was in the right, and I am so sorry for everything that I did and the damage I caused. I hate that it's taken me so long to realize the full scope of it. I spent too long in this community, and I lost so much of my life in the process. I've been armchair diagnosed. I have had intimate parts of my mental health prodded and trivialized for the internet to see, and have experienced harassment because of it. I had to watch the people I care about deteriorate mentally because of the pressure and prodding that had been put on them, because those people could no longer hurt me. People have mocked my art, my voice. Every single part of me has been picked apart and scrutinized. I have nothing left in me for any of this. I have been aggressive. I have been mean. I have bullied people in the name of accountability, and I realize now that deep down, that's not the case. There's a difference between vengeance and accountability, and I've seen and now experienced the receiving end of that. This is not accountability. My actions were not holding people accountable either. A conversation needs to be had about the bizarre, unspoken rules in the community. As well, there needs to be a real discussion about how to hold someone accountable. In my time in therapy, I have realized the difference between holding someone accountable and bullying them into cancellation. You cannot hold someone accountable that you don't know. You have to be in community with them to keep them accountable. Accountability is not something that someone does alone. You have to be in community with people who are willing to help you change, grow, and truly understand the mistakes that have been made, as well as correct them when they do stray from their own growth. As a community, you have to understand that if you truly care about people growing and becoming better, you need to stop pretending that excessive aggression is called for or acceptable. You're being dishonest with yourselves, like I was dishonest with myself. We have to understand that the statement, "there are no bad tactics, only bad targets," is not true. If we truly believed in people growing and getting better, like so many of us claimed, there wouldn't be so many victims in the community. What happened to the victims, both of and within this community, should not have happened. Real accountability is something you have to choose, but it's not something I can do by myself. I am choosing to take the best accountability I can, for my own sake, for the sake of preventing any more people being hurt, and for the sake of the people I've already hurt, and mostly for the sake of the people around me. I am choosing to associate myself with people who will keep me on the right path and who will communicate with me and call me on my actions in the moment. I am choosing to learn to be better and to grow from this. I want to do better, I want to be better, and I am now around people who will help me do that. This brings me to my last apology. I was asked to be in a private call with Chuli, Lio, and Clownteeth, and after much internal debating, as you can see, I've decided against it. For one, I've been having terrible internet problems. It's been crashing on me constantly. And the second was because I knew full well that I would just be walking into a Senate call. I am sorry. I understand the hurt I have caused, and I understand that this isn't what you wanted, but I can only prostrate myself to you so much. In choosing my own personal growth, I have also decided to choose and prioritize my mental well-being, as that's my responsibility. A call would not be productive, and I believe it would serve to re-traumatize both you and myself. This is turning into self-harm, and enough is enough. I also believe, personally, that if you say something privately, you apologize privately, and if it's public, you apologize publicly. This started publicly, which is why I am choosing to apologize publicly as well. I'm certain there's things I've missed, so please understand that to those who have been hurt by me and haven't been named, know that I'm sorry as well. You deserve better than that. You deserve peace. And now, as it stands, Hiten Mitsuru will no longer exist. I am stepping back from the SCC in the only way I know how, and that's getting rid of this part of my life permanently. I've learned through all of this that I'm not ready to handle an audience in these circumstances that was built on this behavior, and if I built this on the backs of hurting other people, then I don't deserve it. So I'm going to walk away. This was the only thing to me that felt like the right decision. My Throne, my Patreon have been closed and deleted to make sure that I'm not making money. A few people were worried about that. I'm not sure when I'll come back, but it will not be anytime soon. I need to unlearn old mindsets, I need to get help, and I need to be myself again. This has done irreparable damage to both myself and the people around me who have been caring for me behind the scenes through this very scary time, and I'm not going to pretend that I am going to permanently leave content creation. I want to say this clearly, because I don't want the interpretation that I am dropping my tail and hiding, but my focus will be on getting better and developing a healthier mindset. I've taken my first steps towards that with the therapy programs I'm in, and I'm sorry for how long it took me to address it. I'm never really sure how much to say about that, because half the people involved actively mocked me for sharing too much and told me that I deserved to be mocked for sharing, and the other half seemed to want my therapist's phone number. So I'll say part of what took so long was establishing that infrastructure. Believe me or don't. I am choosing to walk away for now, but not permanently, as quite a few people have tried to disappear and then reappear without letting anybody know in an attempt to hide, and I'm not one of them. I'm going to go away for a while so that I can get better, so I can be better, so I can heal, and so can all of you, and I'm going to build something from the ground up, because if I'm going to be better, I should build upon better foundation. But it is important to me that this not be done in secret, or that it be considered subterfuge. I want to be transparent about that. You'll know it's me. I'll be under a new name, but you'll know it's me. For now, I wish you well, and goodbye.